I have my Gamestation Go and firmware version 1.1 is finally available. So the question is, should I upgrade? Let's find out. Greetings, Retro Zoltan here. Today I'm diving back into the Atari My Arcade Gamestation Go. If you haven't seen my original review yet, I highly suggest taking a look. And if you want to learn how to add your own games to the system, I made a video about that also. If you saw my last review, you know this thing had a few issues. And to be fair, I even missed a few things. You know that some games didn't have the right controls, didn't look right, and a few left me wondering whether the developers made the call to cut the cord on fixes just to meet the deadline. I was genuinely excited for future updates. I was pressing that update button every few days, hoping to see if they were going to fix something. And maybe, just maybe, some bonus games. A guy can dream, right?
You better not.
Well, now that version 1.1 has arrived, the questions are, what did they fix? And what did they improve? And did they add anything? And why? Why am I suddenly asking myself, what did they remove? So real talk here with respect to My Arcade and Atari. They did a firmware upgrade, but never provided a changelog. You know, the list of things you fixed. While they're being weird about not sharing what they did. It's up to the community to figure it out. So after lots of reading and my own discoveries, this is, I believe, what they've done. If your system isn't harassing you about the upgrade, it will once you connect it to your wireless. You can also force it by going into settings and update pretty easily. Once you confirm, it's going to go ahead and do the rest for you. Keep in mind there's no way to go backwards in versions after this. Even factory settings keep the latest firmware. Normally, this should be your experience, but of course mine was not all sunshine and roses. Every time I was using this thing, it was asking me about the upgrades, and the exact day that I wanted to do one, it stopped asking me. And when I manually did the upgrade, it would say, try again after the network is stable. Again and again. What the hell does that mean? In the end, after reaching out and trying to get some help, the next day it worked right away. So I'm fairly confident in saying, if your system stops asking you about the upgrade, and you get this error, it really should say, My Arcade upgrade servers are down. After the upgrade, I guess the most noticeable difference is the menu screen, which in my opinion looks better. And while cruising through it, it looks and feels smoother. The original had its charm, but I can see that perhaps this was needed. That's all I've noticed about enhancements. But what about fixes? They definitely made some. So I have to come clean about something. In my original review, I completely glossed over Tempest. And trust me, people let me know. One comment I got recently was pretty much asking me how I could review an Atari machine and skip Tempest. And honestly, fair point. But here's the thing. I've always loved watching Tempest. I have childhood memories of watching my brother play this and getting really far, while I sort of was addicted to Dig Dug. The vector lines, the neon colors, the hypnotic spinning. It was intimidating, and whenever I played, I really sucked at it. I'm not sure what my issue was. The spinner never clicked with me on this one, and that's my retro shame. Anyway, Tempest had issues on the Gamestation Go before 1.1. The brightness was off. The geometry felt wrong. It was Tempest, but like a knockoff Tempest. If you're a true Tempest fan like my brother was, then it wasn't satisfying. But good news, version 1.1 fixes it. Aspect ratio corrected. Brightness corrected. Spinner controls massively improved. It actually feels like Tempest now, and that's a huge for anyone who lives and breathes vector games. And speaking of vectors, it looks like all the vector games seem to look better overall, which I believe may have something to do with the aspect ratio change, which is more noticeable with vector games, I believe. Even Major Havoc looks better, and they added spinner controls, which is a lot closer to what I was expecting from this device. There are more vector games on here than I really realized, and they all generally look better now. When the device launched, Pac-Man seemed off, like it wasn't the right ROM. But after complaints, and trust me, there were complaints, it was fixed. The arcade version is now restored, and the gameplay feels correct. And the 2600 version even had its aspect ratio corrected too. If you have any love for the 2600 version of Pac-Man, then you don't want any changes to it whatsoever. A strange change was with Super Breakout. where they removed the D-pad functionality completely. I wouldn't dare play it with the D-pad, but I guess it was never intended to work, so they cleaned that up also. And another fix was with Indy 500. This was something that Gen X grown-up practically manifested into existence. Before the update, this game honestly was unplayable using the D-pad. Now with the spinner, it's actually playable. It feels like a proper driving game instead of a punishment. Well done. Okay, so did they add any new games? No, not a single one. Not even a surprise bonus. I was hoping for another pinball game, or maybe Pitfall. So what did they add? Well, they added information. That's right, pressing the Y button on the Atari Recharge games now gives you controls, tips, detailed strategies, and maybe your horoscope, who knows. Another finding that was caught was that they added a bit more information on the game iRobot, which is a small detail, but I'm glad they did it. I suspect there's a bunch of games with cleaned up information also. So no, they didn't really add anything exciting, but that's okay. We can still add our own with the SD card, right?
Hold it, Coach! You just hold it right there.
Even though it's not supported, even though it's not talked about, my arcade is mucking around with its SD capabilities. And something I wasn't expecting was stuff getting removed. The first devastating removal was the PS1 capability. I can't imagine why, since it seemed to work fine for certain games. Unless if Sony was giving them a hard time. That seems unlikely because Nintendo would have certainly had their lawyers first in line if that was the case. I'm guessing they just felt the emulation wasn't good enough, so they scrapped it? But I know people were using it happily, and now, obviously, not at all. Another removal was Nintendo 64, which I can partially understand, I guess. It didn't work great, but when it did, there were still playable titles if they weren't too graphically intense. And on a system like this, they were welcome, but no more. Dreamcast games also took a hit, but those didn't have sound anyway. I think it would have been better, obviously, to fix the sound, but this is the route they chose to take. I would understand this one if they just had no way to get the sound working. But whatever, it's gone forever now. Game Boy emulation seems to be using a different emulator now, and people are noticing the difference. It was better than removing it, but still, why did they do this? This change makes me the most curious of all. I can't see any other changes to SD capabilities. This was an option never advertised, never encouraged, for testing purposes only. So why did they mess with it? My guess is, and I'm only speculating, is they wanted to tie up loose ends. Or perhaps they were using emulators that they weren't supposed to be using. Or they needed space to make the fixes. It pains me to see it, and I'll probably get some flack for saying it, but I think some reviewers were being completely unfair reviewing the system for the SD piece alone. Like flat out saying this thing was garbage because it couldn't play all the MAME arcade games. Not all games work. Your favorites may not work, but they never said they did. So even though I want to complain this doesn't have ColecoVision, I'll keep that to myself and never say it. Okay, I'm a complete hypocrite, but I would never say the system sucks because, well, it doesn't. At this point, you're probably wondering, Zoltan, is the update worth it? And my answer is mostly yeah. I mean, if you're a Tempest fan, this is the best gift you've gotten all year. If you love arcade-accurate Pac-Man, then boom, you're golden. They added a handful of things, but the removals, yeah, those sting a little. And here's what I would like to see. Just in case if my arcade is watching. Add more games. Surprise us. Throw us a bone. Most of us paid $180 for this. A pinball title, a deep cut, a fan favorite, or perhaps the holy grail Pitfall? A proper log of changes would be nice. You don't have to mention the SD card at all, but knowing you fixed Indy 500 in some sort of documentation would have been great to see. Don't be embarrassed. You fix stuff. We get it. Let us know the effort you're putting in. And please stop fiddling around with SD capabilities. Your changes alone already has people wishing they didn't upgrade, which is a huge shame. And that's all I have to say about the Atari Gamestation Go firmware update to 1.1. It's a fix for Atari users, but more of a punishment for people that want to play other systems on it. Special thanks to watching my videos, and if you want to talk about this sort of thing, I have an official Discord you can always find me on. If you think I'm worthy, I have a Patreon that includes help with systems I review, exclusive content, files, music, and even more. Special thanks to all my patrons shown here. It not only helps me, but it inspires me to keep making content that you want and love. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Wow, look at all of you. I'm honored, truly. I'll try not to let any of you down. X Alpacas, Robert Van Dusen, Gregus Bliss, Fred Garvin, Black Moon, you guys honor me truly. John Campbell, Michael Crow, Anthony Berryhill, Ken, Eddie, Ray G, Will, Joshua Hook, Chris Richards, Josh Whittaku, Gary Ardinger. Thank you so much. You guys are the best. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, happy gaming. Bye.
One night in